Hey, this is Terry with Primare, and I want to talk about in this video the SC15 Prisma MK2. Now we're in a slightly different environment than we ordinarily would to record a product video, and in fact the occasion for this video comes from the fact that my friend Daniel had some issues with these brand new vintage loudspeakers, one of which you see behind me, the Vic speakers. And he, as so many people that we know, are limited in where they can put their speakers and how they can set up their system, because in part their sound room is also their living room, their dining room, their kitchen. And so when he explained that he was having some issues with bass nonlinearities, even though I know he was using a very good integrated amp with DAC as well as our own NP5 Prisma MK2 for streaming, I suggested that he might try the SC15 Prisma MK2 for the main key differentiating feature that that product has, and that is automatic room EQ as well as manual EQ to provide digital signal processing to overcome some of the limitations that people might have in the audio system setup that they can't otherwise overcome. Now, to briefly describe the SC15 Prisma MK2, it is the MK2 version of the original SC15 Prisma, and that was our network player DAC. It has fully functioned not only as a streamer with DAC, but also we added some preamplifier features, analog inputs, for example, as well as variable output, so it could be used effectively as a preamplifier, either as we have it here in Daniel's system, driving an i15mm, or if you wanted to have it partnered with powered loudspeakers, it offered all of those versatilities and those features. Now, it was a great product, and we sold quite a few of them, except that the AKM chip fire, which now happened a few years ago, destroyed the factory's ability to produce the chips that we were using at that time in that current generation of models. And because we had a lot of experience with ESS in the past, as well as it being in the CD35 Prisma player in the current generation, we knew we could easily go to ESS and get the performance that we needed. And so we revised the basic circuit based around this new ESS chip, being sure to preserve the basic characteristics of the AKM, which AKM chips in general have this kind of punchy dynamic to them. They're not quite as high resolving as the ESS, but still have that characteristic. And so we worked very hard with our chief engineer, Bent Nielsen, to really craft the D-Day conversion stage so it preserved the punch of the AKM along with the higher resolution of the ESS. Now, this is a very subtle difference, and for those of you who are using original SC5 Prismas, this may not be a significant enough difference to change over to the new model. So be comforted in the fact that it is still the same level of performance in the original as there is in the MK2. Also be assured that any updates to the MK2 version as well as the original version will be the same for both models. They will all have the same features, they will all have the same functionality. In fact, before I go on to talk about the two very distinguishing differences with the SC15 MK2, let me relay that, just like with the original, this has all the Prisma functionality that you have come to expect, as well as we have added to over the years that platform has been in existence. So not only is it set up to run a NAS, as well as then to set up the individual characteristics of the product, but as time goes on, even though we originally designed it as open architecture where Chromecast or AirPlay would be how you would cast to that unit, with hundreds of applications now in place to be able to do that, so that anyone can have access to the unit to cast from whatever platform they want in whatever form they wanted, there were issues as time went on that AirPlay and Chromecast didn't develop the way we had expected them to. And so we elected to embed Tidal and Qobuz into the Prisma application to provide features that neither AirPlay or Chromecast would allow with those platforms. Now, additionally, people who want to have a more involved, a more sophisticated user experience, because let's admit it, a second-party app like Prisma will never have native app capabilities. We offer Roon as well as Audirvana control systems that can be used with the product so that you get that extra experience, you get that editorial content from Roon, you get that higher fidelity from Audirvana. And also, we're certifying JPlay, which is a lovely iOS only, but lovely control software that really gives you a native experience within a mobile device without the need to have the kind of computer-based programming that you have to have with a Roon or with an Audirvana. So all of those features pertain in the SC15 Prisma Mark II. It is a full, complete suite of streaming and network playback products within that platform. Added to that then, what we did is we had a 3.5 millimeter multi-jack on the back of the original. This was for both digital and analog input, but this kind of seemed to confuse, or maybe was thought to not provide the fidelity that a regular stereo RCA input would provide. And so with that stereo pair of RCA inputs that we already had in place on the original, we've added a second stereo RCA input into the back of the SC15 Prisma Mark II to make it a little bit more capable as a preamplifier or control center. Now do know that those inputs immediately are sent to an ADC, an analog to digital converter, to be able to convert those analog signals into digital, to simplify the circuitry here for use with all of the digital features and functionality we have on board. It simply makes it simple. And I'm proud to say that we have yet to have any customer using the product, or for that matter, a reviewer, make any mention that they felt that the analog inputs were anything but perfectly stellar in their performance. And this holds true. It is a really good A to C conversion stage. And this will come in handy when we talk a little bit more about Daniel's system integration. Now, the big feature, and the thing that Daniel was most interested in, that I was most interested in putting into Daniel's hands, was this auto room EQ. Now, the Auto Room EQ is simply an extension of the Prisma application. You just open up your SC15 Prisma, or open up the Prisma app to your SC15 product. You go to Audio Settings, and there you will see the Room EQ section of the audio settings that you can open it up and then proceed to do your calibration, your measurement and your calibration. Now, if you open up the app, you have to actually choose what your low frequency limit is, because we don't want to overextend what your main speakers are capable of doing in the low frequencies. And so once you've chosen that, then you can then measure, either using the iOS phone or an Apple mobile device upon which this system is based, or a Zen microphone, which I'll get to in just a bit. Once you've done that, once you've opened it up, you can press a button, a calibration or measurement button, and a calibration process will begin. A little circular indicator will tell you how long you are in the process, and then all of a sudden, when it has enough data and enough information, it will say stop in the middle of this little round indicator, and you know that you can then stop the capture process, stop the measurement process, and then you'll be offered the ability to calibrate. And what will happen then is that the automatic Room EQ app will have taken in the entire output of the system, and this is from 20 to 20,000 hertz, so it's measuring the total capacity of the entire system. Now, when it goes to calibrate, though, it will only do it from 500 hertz and below. Now, there are a couple reasons for this. One, upper frequency calibration can cause some issues, particularly with sound staging, if it's not done in the most sophisticated way. And more importantly, what we found is that when bass is lined up, everything falls into place, that your upper frequencies to a certain extent take care of themselves, and more importantly, the voicing of your speakers, the careful craft that is put into the speakers and for which you may have bought them, will be preserved. And what it means then is that in the low frequencies, the speakers are able to align with the acoustics of the room in a way that is much more beneficial. In the case of Daniel's, we had a rather big peak and then a subsequent trough at either side of that peak that made his bass a bit boomy at times, depending upon the output. Once you put this into place, everything gets linear, and you have this a beautiful approach to better sound as it integrates into the home environment, into the acoustic space that you have your speakers. Now, you also have manual EQ, and so once you've done your auto room EQ, you can go in and play around with a variety of settings, with low pass, high pass, graphic equalization, or all kinds of different things that allow you to manipulate it to your heart's content. The only thing I would suggest with that is that while it gives you this amazing flexibility and this wonderful facility, is that you can kind of run into trouble with it. It's a little easy to add too much of this or too little of that, and that in some cases, as we do, where you protect the system by selecting the lowest frequency possible, possible, you can maybe do more harm than good. So use that with some level of caution, but it does allow you to go in and make those incremental adjustments if you feel that somehow the automatic room EQ does not work sufficiently. Now, in most cases it will. In most cases, you will have this well positioned or well integrated into the system to really make your entire system sound better. Now, let's talk briefly before we maybe get Daniel in here to help us with the calibration part of all of this, talk about his system integration or his system installation. And what we did is we started with the SC15 that we've already been talking about at length. And because we wanted to simply provide an entire 15 series system, in fact, this in many ways is the ultimate 15 series system, we have the i15mm installed here. And this we have set up to fixed to the SC15's input, and so it's effectively functioning as a basic amplifier. It's effectively functioning with the fixed input so that it will have all of its volume control taken from the SC15 Prisma itself. Now, Daniel listens to a lot of analog. And while we can plug his lovely Thorens turntable into the phono stage that we have installed here in this i15, the 15mm, it, however, cannot take advantage of the automatic room EQ because it cannot be selected as an input here, routed to the SC15, then brought back to the i15mm as a source. It's just simply not possible. This is where those analog inputs come in handy and where this lovely R15 phono stage serves its main purpose. We're able then to connect the turntable to the R15. Then we connect it to one of the analog inputs of the SC15. Its analog signal is turned into digital, and then the room EQ does what it does to make sure that the signal from the CD player, from streaming, from the phono stage, all has the same calibration to make it work effectively in the room. Similarly then, if we want to play CDs, we have the DD15, that's our CD transport, and that is plugged in digitally in the SC15 as a digital source. It doesn't have to go through the ADC, it automatically then goes through the room EQ and down into the i15 amp to play through these lovely speakers in Daniel's lovely apartment. Now, that's a brief and maybe all too rapid introduction to everything that's happening within this system and within the new SC15 Prisma MK2. And as I said, we're going to make a corollary video with Daniel about how to run through that room EQ process. But should you have any more questions, certainly go to primare.net. You can get a lot of information on the SC15 Prisma product page. There's also the FAQ section that really I would suggest you look to for any questions you might have about Primare product. And certainly there you can submit a help request so that you can send any questions or concerns or ideas or thoughts you might have directly to us, and we will respond as quickly as we possibly can. And so with that, I think I'm going to close and move on to doing some room equalization.